Hello, welcome to the news with the intern. So, you might have heard about some wildfires happening in California and a plane crash that happened recently in uh, DC. So, we're gonna do some news with the intern today. So, I thought we would look into this together. So, let's go ahead and watch this video first to get us started.
These are the moments just before an army helicopter
Alright,
collided with a
so if you look at this right here, they're about to show us what happened. So, TLDR, an army helicopter crashed into a plane. And just to give you a brief little summary before we get too far into it, they say that the plane was about 500 meters above the helicopter, and they said the helicopter was about 500 meters off of where it was supposed to be at. And we'll get into the 40 different people that just recently got laid off from the FAA and why there was only one person working that night instead of two.
an American Airlines passenger plane.
Watch this.
This live feed from the Kennedy Center shows the skyline of Washington, D.C. On the right, you can see the passenger plane
Right there.
finishing a 2-hour flight from Kansas. On board,
They circled it for us.
60 people,
I don't know
including
why
figure
it's buffering.
skaters returning from a competition. On the left,
Okay, this video is getting obnoxious now. It's buffering too much and it's getting irritating, so we're just going to pause it and ignore the video. 67 people are believed to have died after a passenger plane hit a military helicopter in midair near Washington, D.C.'s Ronald Reagan Airport on Wednesday evening. It is not clear what caused the crash. Flight tracking data appears to suggest the helicopter was flying above the permitted altitude minutes before the collision, but an investigation is continuing to determine what went wrong. Authorities have collected the flight data recorders from the American Airlines jets and continue to find bodies in the icy Potomac River where the plane fell. Now, what happened? The plane, a Bombardier CRJ-700, had traveled from Wichita, Kansas, and FYI, the source, if you didn't notice, is BBC, because I've actually got this pulled up from a few different sources, and I would like to go through a couple of different sources with the story, because I've noticed that different media outlets present different information. And so I thought it would be interesting to see what we find across the different sources. And if it's the same stuff, then we won't bother going through it. But I would like to see if any of them are reporting anything different. Anything different or contradictory to the other ones. Because I've noticed sometimes certain media outlets leave out specific details, and other media outlets tell things that directly contradict the other ones, even in mainstream media. And that's not how it should be. Because if they were telling the truth, it definitely would not be contradictory. So, anyways, the plane had traveled from Wichita, Kansas. It was operating an American Airlines Flight 5342. The U.S. Army helicopter was a Sikorsky H-60 Blackhawk that took off from Fort Belvoir in Virginia and belonged to B Company, 12th Aviation Battalion. The helicopter appears to have been flying above the permitted altitude, according to analysis by the BBC's U.S. partner CBS News. And here's 60 passengers and 4 crew were on the plane. And here's the wreckage in the river. And here's the Black Hawk. The plane was 106 feet, or 32.3 meters. There were 60 passengers and 4 crew, and the Black Hawk had 3 U.S. soldiers at 50 feet, 15.27 meters. There's the helicopter right there. Recordings of air traffic control conversations published online suggested the controller tried to warn the helicopter about the American Airlines plane in the seconds before the collision. The helicopter pilot appeared to respond to confirm they were aware of the plane, but moments later, the aircraft hit each other. Transport Secretary Sean Duffy also said he thought the helicopter was aware of the plane nearby. Now we're getting into some shady stuff over here. Let's see if this video will play.
Pass 25, get the CRJ in flight. Pass 25, pass behind the CRJ.
30 seconds later.
Did you see that? 472. American 3130, go around, turn left in 250, climb maintain 3000.
Air traffic controllers appear to have seen the
Lucy
collision.
347, go around, climb maintain 3000, flight 3,000, heading, go around 3000, Blue Streak
They begin
5347.
redirecting other flights to land elsewhere. I don't know. That's not, I don't know. I don't understand all that part. Joining Duffy at a briefing on Thursday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth added that the helicopter was on an annual proficiency flight performing a night evaluation, and the crew had night vision goggles. Okay, okay. What's going on here? They had night vision goggles performing a night evaluation on an annual proficiency flight. How did this happen when they were that well prepared? The collision happened at about 2100 local time as the plane approached Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. One eyewitness, Ari Schulman, told NBC Washington that on the plane's approach it looked normal until he saw it bank hard to the right with streams of sparks running underneath the craft, illuminating his belly, which he believed to look very, very wrong. Another eyewitness, Jimmy Mazzeo, recalled seeing what looked like a white flare in the sky. He remarked that planes approaching the airport appeared to have been flying in irregular patterns. Then they got some graphs here. Yeah. Okay, so there's the path of the Black Hawk right into the path of the flight. The plane was approaching runway 33. Here we're getting into the nitty-gritty. After the impact, the passenger plane broke into multiple pieces and sank several feet into the river, while the helicopter ended up upside down on the water. Hundreds of first responders on rubber boats were deployed to search for survivors. Officials highlighted the challenging conditions in which they were working due to ice floating on the freezing cold river and contending with the plane wreckage. They later said they did not expect to find any survivors and had changed the focus of their mission to focus on recovering bodies. How many victims are there? Details are emerging about the 64 people who were on board the plane, who included top figure skaters as well as 4 crew members. Meanwhile, the helicopter was carrying 3 soldiers. 41 bodies have now been recovered, including the 3 people who were flying on the U.S. military helicopter, emergency officials told the BBC. The people had to have been on the flight include the skaters, a young pilot, flight attendants, and a lawyer traveling home on her birthday. And we're going to get into these victims here in a minute because there's a few things I would like to point out about a couple of these victims. They comprise a range of nationalities. And several of them have been identified by family members and organizations. Organizations with an S. Okay, if that's how you want to spell it. Among the skaters were 6 people linked to a club in Boston. They were 2 teenagers, their mothers, and 2 Russian coaches. I wanted to point out that they were Russian. Quick little derailment here. So, back around December of last year, I saw the Russian media decided to tell the Russian citizens it would be a bad idea. They weren't outright banning it, but they were highly implying and suggesting that all Russian citizens should probably not go to America anytime in the new year, stating that going to America early on in the new year would likely be a bad idea. Just wanted to throw that out there. Now, back to this. Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov, who were former world champions in their sport, the club said. You know what? I've had such bad luck with videos on this stream, I'm not even going to bother trying with that one. The plane's captain, Jonathan Campos, was named by his aunt, who told the New York Times that flying planes had been her nephew's lifelong dream. Okay. Ryan O'Hara was the new chief of the helicopter, according to CBS. And we're going to get to that real soon. Whew. It remains unclear what caused the crash. Officials have retrieved from the jet the data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, known as the black boxes, and will look into possible contributing factors, including human error. The National Transport, because there is, including human error, there were some interesting people on that flight, other than what we've mentioned already. We're going to get into that very soon as well, because on one of these things somewhere around here, I think I've got a whole list of people. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, began its first full day of investigation on Thursday and intends to release a preliminary report in 30 days. Hegseth has said he expected the investigation to establish whether the helicopter was flying in the right corridor and altitude. Well, we've already been told that it was flying 500 meters off course. So, NTSB officials said on Thursday that the helicopter appeared to move from one corridor into another in a standard maneuver. The spelling is tripping me up. As the official probe continues, the New York Times has reported that the air traffic control staffing was not normal at the time, citing a preliminary Federal Aviation Administration report. Now we're getting into the real serious issues here. The stuff that shouldn't have happened. Normally, 2 people manage helicopters and airplanes flying in the area, but only 1 person was reportedly doing so at the time of the crash, the NYT and CBS reported. It has also been reported by the Washington Post and CNN that just 24 hours before the deadly crash, another jet had to abort its landing at the airport after a helicopter came close to its flight path. And I can't wait any longer. I have to say it. Just 8 days before this crash happened, the new administration in the White House decided, oh, hey, we're a new administration, so we should just get rid of everything from the previous administration, and we should just get rid of all the people. And so they recently laid off over 40 different people from the FAA. And I'm going to try not to dip too far into conspiracy territory here, but I would just like to point out that Elon Musk had only just last year been in some legal disputes with the FAA because he got in some trouble with ignoring some safety precautions on some of his rockets in the SpaceX program. And he wasn't very happy with a lot of those members of the FAA that just recently got laid off. And I just I'm just going to leave it at that. Now, for now. Now, what has President Trump said? President Trump said on Friday that the Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high, quote, by a lot, unquote. And then he also said, it was far above the 200 feet limit. That's not really too complicated to understand, is it? He said. The helicopter does appear to have been flying above the limit, according to publicly available flight data analyzed by CBS News. Data from Flight Radar 24 showed the helicopter's last estimated altitude was about 400 feet. Why is it on this day, on that flight, they were as much as 150 to 200 feet higher than they knew that they should be? Greg Faith, a former senior air safety investigator, told CBS. Here is the question that I'm asking. Now, as I said a minute ago, I'm going to try not to dip too far into conspiracy territory here, but that is a very good question. And I would also like to point out that right before, as I stated a second ago, 8 days before this crash, over 40 FAA officials were laid off. And for about 16 years previously, they had thousands and thousands of successful flights without an incident like this. And then just 8 days after the layoffs, this kind of stuff starts happening. Just put 1 and 1 together, people. 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's all there is to it. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told Fox News morning show on Friday someone was at the wrong altitude. Oh, you think? The investigation will help us understand that. Was the Black Hawk too high? Was it on course? Right now, we don't quite know. Trump said earlier the country was in mourning before going on to take a swipe at his political foes. I'm going to be professional about this. He speculated that standards had been lowered for hiring air traffic controllers in the FAA during the Joe Biden and Barack Obama presidencies, claiming this could have been a factor in the disaster. You know what else could have been a factor in the disaster? The fact that you recently fired 40 people. That might have been a factor. The fact that there was only one person working that night when there should have been 2 people working that night as a result of you laying off over 40 different people. I wonder if that might have had anything to do with it. I wonder. Trump said he and his team had strong opinions and ideas about what had happened, but acknowledged the investigation was at an early stage. Well, here's an idea. Maybe you shouldn't have laid off 40 people without having replacements ready to back them up. I don't know, but I'm not the smartest person, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe having only one person on duty that night was a good thing. Maybe they wanted this to happen. I don't know. Oh, whoops, I dipped into conspiracy territory. But my point being, why would you get rid of 40 people in such an important job like this without having replacements ready? Like, look, even if you want to get your own people in there because you don't trust the other people, you think they're doing a poor job, that argument is fine. You're fine with that argument. But my argument is, even if you didn't like those 40 people and you thought they were doing a terrible job, maybe you should have gotten replacements before you got rid of them, so maybe this wouldn't have happened. Because if we had 2 people on duty that night, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But, hey, what do I know? I don't know anything about air traffic control. He also announced he was appointing Chris Rochillo as the temporary head of the FAA. The top job there, as well as the positions of administrator and deputy administrator, have been vacant. Yes, vacant, empty, as in nobody has been working them since Trump took office. What's America's air safety record? By the way, major incidents of this kind are relatively rare in the U.S. I mean, up until the year 2025, I guess. The most recent comparable crash was in 2009, according to a list compiled by Reuters. That year, an aircraft crashed on approach to landing in Buffalo, New York, killing all 49 people on board and 1 person on the ground. Oh, so what you're saying is even that one wasn't as bad as this one. The airspace above Washington, D.C. is both busy and highly controlled. It is used by domestic and international traffic using 2 airports, and there are extra factors of presidential flights, heavy military traffic, and flights around the Pentagon. Passenger airlines must follow fixed flight plans, said the BBC's transport correspondent Sean Dilley. Unlike in controlled airspace, military pilots operate under strict instruction of air traffic controller, but unlike their civilian counterparts, they have freedom to deviate and a duty to see and avoid other aircraft, which they said a second ago. They confirmed that they had seen it. Gonna let you think what you will of that one. So let's go ahead and stop sharing this one. And I've got some other stuff to share. So let's go ahead and pull up the next one. So I think I want to pull this one up next. Alright, so a day before the DC plane crash, another jet had to abort first landing at Reagan National. Let's try this video. Oh, hold on. I think the audio is...
As long as it takes in order to obtain...
Okay, let's restart. Hold up. Okay.
Our investigative team will be on scene as long as it takes in order to obtain all of the perishable evidence and all of the fact-finding that is needed to bring us to a conclusion of probable cause. Our mission is to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, and to recommend changes to prevent it from happening again. Since we're just beginning our investigation, we don't have a great deal of information to share right now.
Okay.
We will keep you informed by getting regular updates as we learn more. Our intention is to have a preliminary report within 30 days, and the final report will be issued once we've completed all of our fact-finding and investigation.
Do you have a plan to go visit the site or meet with any of the
I have a
first
plan
responders?
to visit, not the site.
Oh, no. If this is the video I think it is...
Because you tell me, what's the site? The water?
Or to meet with
Want
the
me to go
first
swimming?
responders down there?
Yeah. That was his response. This right here is how the president of our entire country responded to the deaths of nearly 70 people is when they asked if he was going to go to the, site to help with the relief effort or just visit, show that he cares. His caring, super sensitive response was, "What, you want me to go swimming? You want me to go swimming?" 70 people are dead, and this man is making jokes about it. Making jokes about. Yeah, let's pull something else up. Okay, now let's see. Do we want to talk about the black boxes or the crash victims first? Let's see if they say anything about the black boxes that's different from what we've already found, because that other one was BBC. So let's see. Ah, this is also BBC. Okay, okay. So the DC plane crash black boxes have been found as staff shortage claims examined. This was posted 18 hours ago.
The American Airlines flight and the Black Hawk military
So
helicopter
they have circles over
collided
it.
over the
You can
Potomac
see
River.
right there
The
the
first
explosion.
question is whether either was off course.
Watch.
The plane, marked in blue, approached the airport from the south. The helicopter, marked in red, was flying along the river.
Okay.
The Trump administration says both were on a standard flight pattern. But right before the crash, air traffic control speaks to the helicopter, referring to it as Pat 25 and
I'm sorry about the buffering.
plane
Please bear
as
with me.
CRJ. This is the audio.
S25, CRJ in flight. S25, S1 CRJ.
In other words, the helicopter was being told to watch out. In another
Okay. Pass behind them.
recording, we hear what appears to be the helicopter's pilot.
Aircraft in flight, pressure separation.
There's a question here about which aircraft is being referred to, because
They have two.
as we can see from the footage, there was another plane nearby. We don't know if the helicopter pilot had this plane in sight or the one he would collide with. Soon after, we hear air traffic control again.
I don't know if you caught earlier what happened, but there was a collision on the approach in the 3-3. We're going to be shutting down operations for the indefinite future.
In the seconds before what had happened, wouldn't there have been an automated warning? Passenger aircraft in the US use what's called a collision avoidance system. One expert, though, told the BBC the system's warnings can be inhibited when an aircraft's at low altitude.
Oh, no.
Lastly, would we expect planes and helicopters to share airspace in Washington? We definitely would. Ronald Reagan National Airport has one of the busiest runways in the
Okay,
US.
this is what we
it's
went
just
over a minute
5
ago.
miles from the White House. There's a huge amount of military and
The
civilian
Pentagon.
flights in a relatively
All
small
that
area.
stuff.
Some aspects of the moments before this disaster were not unusual. But something went terribly wrong. Why did this helicopter and plane collide? That question still requires an answer.
Huh. Maybe it collided because someone decided to lay off 40 people in the FAA without giving them replacements and then make jokes about the incident after it happened. But the black boxes for a passenger plane that hit a military helicopter above Washington, D.C. have been found as questions mount about staffing and close calls at the airport where the plane was landing. Normally, 2 people, this part right here, this is the part that bothers me so much. So much. Normally, 2 people manage air traffic control for helicopters and airplanes flying in the area, one of the most controlled airspaces in the world, but only one person was doing so at the time of Wednesday's crash, according to sources cited by the BBC's U.S. partner CBS News. I wonder if they only had one person because they didn't have enough staff because they just recently laid off 40 people. Officials are still investigating the cause of the incident, believed to have killed all 67 people on the 2 aircraft. Oh, so we went from 63, and now we're up to 67. The National Transportation Safety Board said a preliminary report would be issued in 30 days. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, known as black boxes, may help offer clues about what may have gone wrong on the flight. According to the NTSB, late on Thursday night, both boxes were transported to one of its labs for evaluation. Okay, here we go. Let's see what it says. In other developments on Thursday, air traffic control staffing numbers, first reported by New York Times, was noted as not normal, according to a preliminary Federal Aviation Administration report. The federal government has struggled for years to fill certain positions at the FAA, and then as soon as this person got in charge, they just, destroyed all that. The type of staffing that had one air traffic control worker managing both the helicopters and planes at the Reagan Washington National Airport on Wednesday night is reportedly not uncommon and did not breach guidelines. So, wait, hold on. Now you're contradicting yourself. Which one is it? Is it not uncommon, or is it what was the where did it go? Where was it? Normally 2 people manage it. So is it normally, or is it not uncommon? Which one? Which one? Because they said up here it says normally 2 people manage air traffic control, and then down here it says it is reportedly not uncommon and did not breach guidelines. Not uncommon. So is it normal to have 2 people, or is it normal to have 1 people? You're contradicting yourself. This is why I look at multiple sources and multiple articles, because even this is from BBC, and it's not even a different article. It's literally like a paragraph further down in the same article. This is why it's important to look at multiple sources and multiple articles, even from the same source, because some of them might have details that the other articles or sources didn't have. Like this detail, this very contradictory detail. So someone is messing up somewhere. Divers spent most of Thursday swimming through the icy waters of the Potomac River searching for the bodies of the victims. The search was suspended on Thursday evening due to dangerous conditions. There were 64 passengers aboard the American Airlines flight that collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter that was on a training mission flight. 3 soldiers were on board. Teams have so far recovered 40 intact bodies and the partial remains of several others, according to the BBC's U.S. news partner CBS, citing a source familiar with the investigation. Personal opinion, I do not feel safe in this country. At all. Not in the least. And it's getting worse every single day. Feeling less and less safe. But aside from that, at a White House briefing on Thursday, President Donald Trump began with a moment of silence and a prayer for victims. He said, "We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling," adding, "Our hearts are shattered alongside yours." We already read all that, and to be quite honest with you, it's just going to upset me if I read it again, so we're going to skip over that part. You can read it if you want to, but we've already talked about that. Let's start from here. DEI programs aim to promote participation in workplaces by people from a range of backgrounds. Backers say they address historical or ongoing discrimination and underrepresentation, but critics argue they can themselves be discriminatory. I'm not going to get into my opinion on that right here. Trump signed an executive order to appoint a new head of the FAA. On Friday, Trump posted to his Truth Social account that the Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high by a lot. Aircraft on that particular flight path must stay below 200 feet, experts have said. Investigators are considering a number of factors, including height, in determining the cause of the crash, but have not yet made any public conclusions, NTSB officials said Thursday. The fatal incident happened at about 2100 local time on Wednesday, when a PSA Airlines jet operating at American Airlines 5342 collided midair with a U.S. Army helicopter as it approached Reagan Washington National Airport. We already know most of this, so I'm going to scroll through real quick and see if there's any more details that we don't have yet. It departed from Kansas, dozens of passengers. Okay, here's where I want to pick back up again. The plane, a Bombardier CRJ 700, had departed from Wichita, Kansas, and was carrying dozens of passengers, including a pair of young figure skaters, their mothers, and 2 Russian coaches. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov was quoted in Russia and media saying, "There were other of our fellow citizens on board. It's bad news today from Washington. We are sorry and send our condolences to families and friends." On Friday, China confirmed 2 of its nationals died in the crash and expressed deep condolences. Just wanted to point out that there were a lot of people on this flight that were not U.S. citizens. Just wanted to point that out. Think of that what you will. China urged the U.S. to promptly update it on the progress of the search and rescue operations, swiftly clarify the cause of the accident, and properly handle follow-up matters, a spokesperson for Beijing's foreign ministry said. The helicopter was a Sikorsky H-60 that took off from Fort Belvoir in Virginia with 3 soldiers on board and belonged to B Company 12th Aviation Battalion. It's a tragedy, a horrible loss of life for those 64 souls on that civilian airliner. And of course, the 3 soldiers in that Black Hawk helicopter, said new Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Wednesday. Now we're going to close this one. Now here is something that really, really proves why I like to go through multiple sources to find my information. Because this next thing I'm about to show you, there's a reason I saved this as my last article to share about the planes before we move on to talking about the LA fires, because that's a big deal too. But this is about to present some details that I have not found anywhere else. And this is not a mainstream website. So first, I would like to point out that on this website, it is called WXII12.com. Okay? Just to give you a very clear description that this right here is WXII 12. I've never heard of this news network before. Full disclosure, I've never heard of this news network. But they presented some information that I really, really thought made me think. So, you've already heard there were a bunch of, promising future athletes on this, and a couple of foreign people from China and Russia. You already know about that. But you know what the other sources aren't reporting about the victims that were on this plane? Scroll down. Wait. Yeah. That says exactly what you think it is. Ian Epstein, as in Epstein Island, Epstein's List. Epstein was one of the flight attendants aboard AA Flight 5342. His daughter Hannah Epstein said in a statement, "Ian Epstein was full of life. He loved being a flight attendant because he truly enjoyed traveling and meeting new people, but his true love was his family. He was a father, a stepfather, a husband, and a brother. He will be truly missed." Ian Epstein was on that flight. I wanted to make that very, very clear that a member of the Epstein family was on that flight. And with all this stuff going on, not this particular Epstein. I don't know anything about this man named Ian Epstein, but you know about his, family member that ended up in prison from the island. I'm not trying to get too far into all that right here, but if I'm sure you're all aware of Epstein Island and that whole thing, and I'm sure you're aware that the supposed Epstein client list has not been released. So anything with the Epstein name in it definitely stands out to me. Because even though it's not the particular Epstein, it's still someone in their family, and he might have known something that. Okay, I'm going full conspiracy territory. Okay, put your tinfoil hats on, people, because I'm wondering, Ian Epstein, what if something happened to this flight? Not saying what, but what if something happened because he was on the flight? What if someone was targeting the flight because they thought he knew something? Just something to keep in mind. Something I've been thinking about ever since this happened, ever since I saw this name on this list, is why Epstein. That really, really stood out to me. That there was an Epstein on this flight. There were Russians on the flight, Chinese people on the flight. There is a lot, and with the current political climate of the world, I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just, it's a lot to think about. Let's see if any of these other names stand out to us. Peter Livingston. Why does that name sound familiar? Peter was Donna's husband, was the father of figure skaters Everly and Alidia. Livingston sounds like a very familiar name to me, but I don't know why. So if anyone out there knows anything about the Livingston family that would be interesting, let us know. It might just be because I've been reading a lot of articles about this and maybe it just stood out to me. And then they have other people that are not yet identified. Now, here is a small snippet of this. I would like to read a little bit about this because I feel some of this stuff is important. So I just want to scroll through here real quick. We'll talk about the Black Hawk crew chief in a minute. We'll talk about the soldiers. Let's do this one section at a time, though. Okay, so 2 flight attendants identified. Hannah Epstein, the daughter of Ian Epstein, provided WPBF, a Hearst television station in West Palm Beach, Florida, with a photo of her father, who was a flight attendant on American Airlines Flight 5342. In a post on Facebook, the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, AFA, also confirmed Epstein's identity. The union, which represents flight attendants, also said Denijah Elder, also a flight attendant, was on the plane. Our AFA PSA siblings, Ian Epstein and Denijah Elder, lost their lives last night on the American Eagle PSA Flight 5342 crash, the union said. Ian and Denijah were Charlotte-based flight attendants who began flying in 2020 and 2024, respectively. This news is still very fresh, and we want to respect Ian and Denijah's family and friends during this time, and give them time to let us know how they want to honor and remember him. Our commitment is to do everything in our power to make sure this never happens again. Your support means the world to our AFA family. We read that part a minute ago. Hannah said her family appreciates the outpouring of love and support we've received, but added that at this time we would ask for privacy as we process and grieve our loss. Okay, look, about that right there, about asking for privacy. I know that a lot of people trying to reach out just want to help, offer their condolences and all that, but speaking from personal experience, if you absolutely feel that you absolutely must, make one post about it or one comment, and then please leave it alone. Drop it. Because the more that people talk about this, the more that people discuss this, the harder it becomes for the family to move on. It gets more and more difficult for them to move on and recover and mourn properly if people won't let them. Let them do their thing and try not to bring it up. Like, yes, it's obviously a big tragedy and it should be discussed, but like, do one thing on it and then leave it. Don't keep bringing it up for months and months and months and months after. Think of me what you will. Azra Hussein Raza, 26 years old, was one of several victims killed. Her father-in-law, Dr. Hashim Raza, told CNN, a daughter of Indian immigrants. My conspiracy brain is triggered, but I think I said that a minute ago, so I won't bring that up again. Hussein Raza graduated with honors in 2020 from Indiana University and married her college sweetheart in August 2023, Raza said. Raza was a Washington, D.C. based consultant who traveled to Wichita twice a month to work on a turnaround project for a hospital there, her father-in-law said. She would often call him at the end of his late emergency room shifts to make sure he stayed awake on the drive home, he told CNN. She went out of her way for everybody, Raza said. Coaches and skaters. We talked about that. There is a lot going on here. There were some friends on an annual hunting trip. Black Hawk crew chief. Alright. So, that all happened. Civil rights okay, let's read about this one. That conspiracy I mentioned a minute ago, a civil rights attorney. Trying not to get too much into conspiracy territory. A Harvard-trained civil rights attorney, Kaya Duggins, and two bright young law associates, Sarah Lee Best and Elizabeth Ann Keyes, are also among the victims. Duggins, an attorney at the Civil Rights Corps in Washington, was returning home from visiting her family in Wichita when she died in the collision, according to KWCH. We are coming to terms with the grief associated with the loss of our beautiful and accomplished firstborn. Please respect our family's privacy at this time, her family said in a statement reported by KWCH. Duggins got her Juris Doctor from the Harvard Law School in 2021, where she served as president of the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau, and was set to become a professor at Howard University School of Law this fall, the university confirmed in a statement. As a civil rights lawyer, don't dip too far into conspiracy territory, she dedicated her career to fighting against unconstitutional policing. There's been a lot of that going on lately, and unjust money bail practices in Tennessee, Texas, and Washington, D.C. Don't conspiratorialize this. Don't conspiratorialize this. Don't. Duggins served as a White House intern during the Obama administration and spent nearly a year in Taiwan on a Fulbright grant teaching English, according to her LinkedIn and information provided by Wichita State University, where she got her bachelor's degree in economics. Best and Keyes, associates of the law firm Wilkinson Steckloff, were also on the plane Wednesday, the firm confirmed in a statement. Liz and Sarah were cherished members of our firm, wonderful attorneys, colleagues, and friends, the firm said in a statement. A family member confirmed to WLWT that Keyes, age 33, was on board the plane that collided with the helicopter. Elizabeth graduated from Madeira High School in 2010, where her mother said she was valedictorian and graduated from Tufts University in 2014. Elizabeth worked as an attorney in Washington, D.C. Liz had a sharp wit and appreciated it in others. Gatherings were always better when Liz was there. She was filled with light and joy. Liz was a dear friend to so many, offering her best self to them all. Elizabeth's mother said in a statement to WLWT. And then they got more. Let's see if anyone else stands out. Do any of these other names stand out to us? Because there's just too much to go over. We can't dig into every little one. Basics on Bitcoin. Oh, we went too far. Okay, so let's close this page. Now that that is done, you know what? We're at 51 minutes. I think we're going to keep going. We can put the LA fires in here too. Cuz I got 3 more articles for us and we're already at 51 minutes. But this is a special episode, so I think it'll be okay if we go over a little bit on this one. So, let's go for it. We got this. We got 3 more articles. Let's do it. So let's start off with the lithium-ion battery cleanup. That one sounded pretty interesting to me. Oh, and full disclosure, I have not read these articles ahead of time. I thought it would be really fun. Yeah, I have a weird idea of fun, but I said it and I meant it, so I'm going to stick with it. I thought it would be fun to go over these articles together as I'm recording this video. Because I know it's in the middle of the video right now, but if you hadn't already figured it out, this video is live in the same way that SNL is recorded live. Like, I always thought that was so weird, but I'm starting to rant. I'm sorry. Let's get back to this. So, unprecedented number of lithium-ion batteries complicates the LA wildfires cleanup. EVs, electronic vehicles, I believe, laptops, cell phones, and many other common items that use lithium-ion batteries were left behind as residents evacuated during the Eaton Fire and Palisades Fire. So, let's see what this says. The LA County wildfire debris removal process is in phase 1, which involves clearing hazardous materials from properties by the EPA. Lithium-ion are a major challenge in the early stages of debris removal after 2 of the most destructive wildfires on record in California. There are stringent U.S. Environmental Protection Agency requirements for the handling and removal of the batteries in LA County wildfire areas. The Eaton Fire and Palisades fires were nearly 100% contained in Altadena and Pacific Palisades. There's a lot going on with these fires, and we'll get into it here in a minute. I don't want to jump too far ahead right now. So, let's see if this video will play. Oh, hold on. Okay, so let's watch this, but if it starts to get too laggy and buffery like the other videos, I'm just going to give up. So, let's see how far we can make it.
Forever changing the lives of so many. Tonight, all evacuation orders have been lifted, but lingering concerns remain.
Look at all that. Look at that.
NBC4's Darsha Phillips live in Pacific Palisades with more on the warning there. Darsha?
Yeah, Colleen, we actually spent quite a bit of time up in the Pacific Palisades tonight, and there were parts where you could smell these toxic fumes. And that is what officials want to warn residents about, to not spend too much time up there, because especially all those electric car batteries, they could be extremely toxic to your health. Evacuation orders have been lifted and residents are allowed back to check on their homes or what remains, but officials are warning people of the dangers.
We don't know the long-term effects of all this exposure, and we haven't seen it on this large of a scale and this many electric vehicles.
Captain Adam Van Gerpen with LA City Fire says lithium-ion batteries are incredibly toxic.
Even if they look like they're intact, like they weren't damaged, they could have damage on the inside. So they can continue to off-gas. The off-gassing from these lithium-ion batteries can be toxic.
So I'm thinking what he's trying to say is they might be leaky, maybe? I mean, they're definitely dangerous, especially with all the stuff going on.
To your health.
And because they've been damaged and exposed to heat, they can spontaneously explode.
Oh, geez.
There's a lot of hazards that people don't typically think of, but these aren't something that you can just eliminate. You have to have specialists coming out there, identify them, and then properly remove them.
Captain Van Gerpen says people should be very careful about even sifting through the rubble of their homes.
That they have masks, that they have gloves, that they have the regular protection that's needed.
The EPA is working to identify and remove the hazards, which could take weeks or even months. After that is done, residents can begin to clear the debris and make plans to rebuild.
What is difficult for
completely leveled homes. I would just like to briefly mention that some people out there believe that these fires were intentional, and there is a lot of coincidences surrounding that. We'll get to that in just a minute.
people, what is so difficult for people is to understand that right now, especially if their place was destroyed, it's really toxic. It's dangerous for them to be there. There will be a time when they can do the cleaning, but the EPA has got to be in charge with this phase of it.
So right now we're in phase one, the EPA identifying and removing these hazardous materials. Phase two will be when residents can clear the debris out themselves or enlist the help of the Army Corps of Engineers. But again, that could be weeks or months away. Reporting live from the Pacific Palisades, I'm Darsha Phillips, NBC4 News.
So yeah, that happened. I don't want to watch your beauty product video. Leave me alone. Stop it. Okay, let's refresh the page. Sorry about that. They're trying to make me watch stupid videos that no one wants to watch. I don't care about your beauty products. Alright. Leave me alone. Stop with all the pop-ups. Okay. The LA County wildfire debris removal, phase 1. We read about that. Yada, yada, yada. There are stringent U.S. EPA, yeah, blah, blah, blah. The batteries are a major challenge in early stages of the debris removal process after two of the most destructive wildfires on record in California. They power plug-in hybrid cars and electric vehicles, many of which were destroyed by flames in Altadena and the Pacific Palisades. There also are found in laptops, cell phones, and other items left behind as residents evacuated neighborhoods overrun by flames after the fire started January 7th in an extreme Santa Ana windstorm. This will be, from our estimation, probably the largest lithium-ion battery pickup cleanup that's ever happened in the history of the world, said Steve Kalanog, the Environmental Protection Agency's incident commander for the Palisades and Eaton fire cleanups. When damaged and overheated, lithium-ion batteries can ignite and even explode. Residual heat can trigger a reaction that can lead to combustion, a danger that can develop over days, weeks, or months. Firefighters and public safety authorities warned of the dangers as evacuations were lifted and residents returned to neighborhoods. Sorry, I got into my southern accent real heavy there. I'll try to fix that. Warned of the dangers. Okay, I'm back to my normal voice. Lithium-ion batteries might have no visible signs of damage, but can still pose a hazard for returning residents and debris removal teams. And see, jokes like that little accent thing right there, you don't get those on pre-recorded videos. You only get those when it's recorded live. From Saturday. Oh wait, no, I'm not in New York. But it is Saturday. And this is being recorded with no editing. Love it, don't you? How fires could turn household items toxic. Burning ordinary materials that make up people's daily lives can change their chemical properties and turn them hazardous. So there's a lot of details, so I don't think I'm going to go into the specifics of each one. I'm just going to mention them briefly. So paints, pesticides, ammunition such as exploding bullets. Ooh, that sounds dangerous. Batteries, they can explode, spewing chemicals. Pool chemicals, air conditioners, tiny particles that end up in the ash and air can harm humans. Oh, wow. Lawnmowers, lab equipment, lead acid batteries, and chainsaws can all become pollutants. We don't know the long-term effects of all this exposure, and we haven't seen this on this large of a scale in this many electric vehicles, said LA City Fire Captain Adam Van Gerpen. This is an unprecedented amount of electrical vehicles with lithium-ion batteries in there. In Los Angeles County, there were more than 99,000 zero-emission vehicles, including battery, electric, plug-in hybrid, and fuel cell electric vehicles, sold in 2024 alone, led by sales of Tesla Models Y and 3. In Pacific Palisades, there were more than nearly 700 newly registered zero-emission vehicles in 2024. In Altadena, there were more than 400 new ZEV sales last year. With the lithium-ion batteries, even if they look like they are intact, they could have damage on the inside, so they continue to go off gas, and the off gas from these batteries can be toxic to your health, Van Gerpen said. The batteries are one major reason there are stringent U.S. Environmental Protection Agency requirements that are prioritized in the post-wildfire cleanup process. Hazardous materials teams inspect homes and flag those with lithium-ion batteries, many of which were not entirely consumed by the fire and require expertise in handling. A battery recovery team then leads the effort to collect the batteries. Removing the batteries requires technical sophistication and care, Kenalog said. EPA team members wear fire-resistant clothes, under-protective suits, masks, and other protection. Collected batteries are de-energized so they can be crushed or shipped to a facility in special packaging. Oh, wow. A couple finds an engagement ring in the fire.
Families are just returning to what's left of their homes after the Palisades and the Eaton fires. They are looking for whatever they can. One guy was looking for something very specific, the ring he was about to use to propose. NBC4's Lolita Lopez picks up the story from here.
This is my desk frame with the bow in the middle.
Brian McShay and Stephanie Rayner looked through what is left of their little blue bungalow on Ventura Street in Altadena, only days after they first sifted through the debris.
He's overlooking at like his studio.
On that day, Brian was looking for one particular thing, an engagement ring he had placed in his desk to surprise Stephanie in the near future.
My first reaction was like, oh, look, here it is.
Among the rubble and under his guitar strings, he says he found his diamond in the rough.
You think about how much all this pressure, all this perfection you want in the moment that you propose, but I found it, and it's like, oh, here it is. Will you marry me?
Oh, I cried.
Wow.
I was crying. I had my glasses with the goggles on top, and they like fogged up completely. And so I just went and I like gave him a big hug, and I obviously said yes.
They asked a woman passing by to take this photo and commemorate the moment. Aww. The ring is not yet on her finger. They took it to get cleaned at the jeweler where Brian bought it. The couple is now planning their wedding and planning to come home. They say Altadena has always been part of their love story.
That's beautiful. Entire homes being completely obliterated, and against all odds, the ring was okay. Wow. The LA County wildfire debris removal process phase 1. We already read about that. Let's get to the next part. The EPA said an executive order issued by President Trump directs the agency to complete its hazardous materials mission responding to the LA California wildfires as soon as practical. The agency will have upwards of 1,000 people working on Phase 1 cleanup, a required process to ensure the safety of property owners and those working at the site, the news release said. Alright, there's that one. Alright, so we're almost there. We're almost there, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me through this extra long special episode. We got two more things to talk about. So let's go ahead and talk about this one. All right. Next thing up.
Now to more on the ongoing natural disasters.
So it says the death toll in the fires rises to 29.
There in California. You've seen the images, heartbreaking there. President Trump on Friday toured the damage caused by the wildfires in Los Angeles, meeting with Governor Gavin Newsom and other officials. And now, after weeks of catastrophic fires, rain is now bringing a new threat of mudslides. Let's bring in ABC's Melissa Adon right now in Malibu there for us. And we see that destruction behind you, Melissa.
Now, this caught my eye off to the side. I'm not actually going to look at this article right here on stream, but this one caught my eye. Air traffic controllers, because we were talking about the DC plane crash a minute ago. This article on ABC News, they have a related article over here that says air traffic controllers were initially offered buyouts and told to consider leaving government. Okay, back to our video.
How concerning are these new mudslide threats? Because a lot of people have been worried about this. How are firefighters even preparing for it?
Exactly, Gio, right? It's just like one thing after the other here in the community. But the good news is there are preparations going on. I want to show you and kind of explain how this happens, right? So here we're on the stretch of Pacific Coast Highway. This is
oh, great. Now they got fires and mudslides.
Where there's been so much devastation from the Pacific Palisades all the way down here through Malibu. And you see essentially these hillsides. This is what it looks like.
Hey, if anyone out there is religious, this is starting to look like the end times. Just saying.
For miles, Gio. It is just burn scar, all of this. And now officials.
But, I mean, people have been saying it's the end times pretty much my whole life, so that's nothing new.
Officials are worried any amount of water, so even though we're only expecting to get about an inch, that could be detrimental and cause mudslides. Of course, we could see, unfortunately, some of this debris flow into streets, of blocking that off. That's one concern. However, we have seen officials and crews coming out to basically shore up the hillsides. We've also seen lots of people packing up sandbags in other areas closer to where there's still homes that are standing. Those areas are basically being fortified and protected. So that's the good news, right? Making sure that people are aware and are trying to clear out vegetation and do as much as they can ahead of it. But another issue, Gio, is also the toxic ash buildup. You can see that from, of course, all of the devastation. That is a huge issue that we're getting.
All right, there's a lot on this. We're going to stop it there. I think we get the idea. Mudslides are very serious danger. At least 29 people have died as multiple wildfires, fueled by severe drought conditions and strong winds, rage across Southern California. Thousands of firefighters have been battling wildfires across 45 square miles of densely populated Los Angeles County. The two largest fires, the Palisades Fire in Pacific Palisades and the Eaton Fire near Pasadena, remain active. One of the latest, the Hughes Fire in the Castaic area, has prompted evacuation orders for tens of thousands of people. Oh, that's all it's really talking about right here. These are different articles, I think. But it's giving us little brief snippets, so let's see what it says. Border 2 fire spreads to more than 5,300 acres. The Border 2 fire near the San Diego-Mexico border has spread to more than 5,300 acres and is 10% contained. Pennsylvania sends 40 firefighters to LA to help fight the multiple wildfires spreading across the region, Governor Josh Shapiro said. My administration is proud to support national wildfire response efforts with these brave and highly trained crews who are answering the call to protect lives and communities. Pennsylvania stands ready to help any state facing these unprecedented challenges. Alright, so let's end this. And let's go ahead and get on to our very last article. Now, before we get too deep into this, I would just like to quickly point something out that I haven't seen on these articles yet. And as always, do your own research, fact check us, and if, me or anyone else, if anyone here tells you anything that you find to be wrong, then please let us know and correct us. Sometimes we get things wrong. But before we get too far into this, I would like to briefly mention that I have actually been keeping up with this myself for like the last month, and there is a lot going on here, and I feel like they're leaving a lot out of these articles. But I've seen some other sources report, for example, I know this is NBC News right here. I know they have a bit of a history, but Fox News in particular actually reported about this and said that they just recently cut like 17.8 million or billion, I'm going to say probably million, I don't remember, but $17.8 million in funding from the fire department right before this happened. Right before the fire started, they cut a lot of funding from the fire department. People had their home insurance policies revoked right before this happened. There's a lot of very highly conspiratorial stuff going on with these fires, and with what I've researched over the past month looking into this on my own, I personally, I've been convinced. They have convinced me that these fires were intentional. There's a lot going on here, but I don't know if we're going to get into all that right here, because it looks like a lot of the mainstream sources are not reporting those things. And I've seen other people point out, you know, they're right next to the ocean. Why can't they just use that water to fight the fires? And people are like, well, there's too much salt in the water, so, you know, you can't do that because it would destroy the crops, which that makes sense. And that's what I initially thought. But then other people have pointed out that you could just take the water to a facility, clean the water out, and once you get rid of the water, I think it's called desalination. And if you get the salt out of the water, you could use the water to fight the fires. So there's a lot going into this, but let's see what they're talking about on this article.
Tonight, a new danger emerging across a fire-stricken city. This Palisades home split in half after officials say a water leak caused a scorched hillside to give way. No one was hurt, but the still smoldering scene piling on anxiety ahead of any future rain.
Okay, so we read about that a minute ago. And fueled by powerful winds and dry conditions, a series of ferocious wildfires erupted on January 7th and roared across the Los Angeles area, killing at least 29 people, including some who died trying to prevent the fires from engulfing their homes and destroying thousands of structures. Now, I know we're already over the hour mark, so I'm going to try to wrap this up pretty quickly from here. Alright. The Palisades fire erupted the morning of January 7th in Pacific Palisades, a Los Angeles neighborhood east of Malibu, as a brush fire. The blaze grew to 23,448 acres before it was declared 100% contained on Friday, according to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, known as CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE said the fire damaged or destroyed more than 6,800 structures. The Eaton fire ignited hours after the Palisades fire near a canyon in the sprawling national forest lands of downtown Los Angeles. It had exploded to 14,021 acres and was 100% contained Friday, according to CAL FIRE. The agency has reported that 10,491 structures were damaged or destroyed in the blaze. As firefighters were battling the largest blazes, additional fires broke out in the Los Angeles area. Crews were able to stop the forward spread and contain the blazes. Those blazes, which included the Lydia, Archer, Woodley, Sunset, Kenneth, Hearst, and Otto fires, have been 100% contained and are no longer active, according to CAL FIRE. Between them, the fires scorched 2,399 acres. 2 weeks after the initial fires, the Hughes Fire began near Castaic Lake in northern Los Angeles County on January 22nd and quickly grew to over 10,000 acres. It was fully contained Thursday after covering 10,425 acres. And as we mentioned a minute ago, there have been 29 people have died in the fires, according to Los Angeles County officials. The county medical examiner's office is still investigating many of the deaths. The department noted that it cannot confirm human remains until it processes them at its facility. At least 17 of the deaths were in the Eaton fire and 12 in the Palisades fire, according to the medical examiner's office. The medical examiner's office said it could take weeks to confirm the identities of those killed. Officials have warned that the death toll could grow. LA County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney said a significant number of people who did not heed evacuation orders have been injured in the Palisades fire. He also said there have been significant injuries in the Eaton fire. How many people are affected? At one point, there were close to 200,000 people under evacuation orders as crews tried to battle back the fires. In the days and weeks since, officials announced the limited repopulation for some areas evacuated amid the Palisades and Eaton fires. The City of Los Angeles Joint Information Center announced Monday that residents off all burn areas in the city's portion of the Palisades fire will be allowed to return, but the overnight curfew remained. The cities of Malibu and Santa Monica, as well as the areas of the Palisades fire controlled by Los Angeles County, lifted evacuations previously. Residents of the Eaton fire were also allowed to return last week, but the overnight curfew for the zone remained. The fires have destroyed entire neighborhoods and blocks, leaving an unknown number of people homeless. The insured losses from the fires may exceed $20 billion, and total economic losses could reach $50 billion, according to estimates published by J.P. Morgan. Those losses would far exceed the $12.5 billion in insured damages from the 2018 Camp Fire, which until now was the costliest blaze in the country's history, according to data from Aon. 12.5 up to 50. Yo. Wow. What led to the fires? The official cause of the fires has not been determined. But I would like to point out that even though they say there has not been an official cause, there have been many speculative causes. For example, as I mentioned Fox News earlier, some of my family members watch Fox News, so I see like bits and snippets here and there. And Fox News reported that there were some people, some kids, playing with some fireworks out in the forest right before all this went off. So that's one possibility. The combination of drought-like conditions, Southern California has had less than 10% of average rainfall since October 1st, and powerful offshore winds that hit the region last week prompted fire weather that was, in the words of the National Weather Service, about as bad as it gets. The agency issued a red flag warning indicating an increased risk for fire danger to 19 million people. Wind gusts topping 70 miles per hour were recorded at several locations across the region. Climate scientist Daniel Swain pointed to the weather whiplash California has experienced in recent years, lurching between drought and heavy rainfall, and said such swings are a key element of the fire weather gripping the region. It's not just that drier conditions are perpetually more likely in a warming climate, he said, according Inside Climate News. It's that this oscillation back and forth between states is something that is particularly consequential for wildfire in Southern California. Alright. Now, real quick, before we head out, I would highly suggest that you all look into the LA wildfires on your own time, if you're interested in this at all, because there is a lot, and I mean a lot more, that I didn't even scratch the surface of about the LA fires in particular. Like, let me put it this way. A few weeks ago, I watched a 3-hour video about the LA fires. Just a few weeks ago, and they pointed out a lot of stuff. But I don't have all the details right here at my fingertips about that. And, you know, a lot of it is conspiracy stuff with no real evidence, per se. A lot of coincidences, but they're very serious coincidences. And I think it would be important for people to at least be aware of them so they can make up their own mind about whether or not they believe it. But I guess I will say this much. Long story short, there's a lot of really shady stuff going on with these LA fires right now, like in terms of politics and insurance companies and government funding. Just going to be very vague about it. And some people, you ever heard of this little thing called eminent domain? Some people believe there was a reason for those fires, and I'll just leave it at that. But thank you all for coming to hang out with me. Thank you especially for hanging out with me for the extended time on this special episode. And I will see you next time. Remember, stay uncanny.